Good morning, everyone. So today, I'd like to thank everyone. Happy Sunday. We hope everyone had a great week. We're going to go ahead and start today by asking the great family of God to guide us with understanding, empathy, intuition, sensation, feeling, and thinking that they guide us and that we feel them and that we behave and act in accordance to them, whatever they may be to you. Amen. So today we're gonna go ahead and start. We're gonna start with Joseph, Mary, and baby J. Right? We're gonna make them human. We're gonna remove their divinity slightly. And so I want you to let's think of Mary, right? And so for Mary, if we remove their divinity, that means there's a possibility that Mary was a single mom and already had a kid, right? Mary was pregnant and didn't know. Maybe Mary, right, she was in a previous marriage and the dude was like, oh no, sorry, hon, you gotta take me to Jerry Springer, right? And he booked. Maybe her man was a veteran, right? And he died in a foreign war. Maybe, he was in a camel caravan and died. Or never came back. For whatever the reason though, right? Here's Mary. Maybe she's pregnant, maybe she has a kid, right? Or maybe she's not. She hasn't met Joe yet, right? Living her life, right? Going about her day, her duties, grabbing water, cooking food, meeting up with the ladies, right? And back in those days, they had coffee and they had tea, right? They had spice lattes and the cinnamon was extra cinnamony and the spice extra spicy. And they probably even had pumpkin spice lattes. So back in those days, they had the real spice and the nutmeg was extra nutty, right? And so Mary went about her day doing her little things, right? Mary could look like any one woman on the face of the planet. So it's really difficult to gauge like descriptions. And then we look at Joseph, right? Joseph, at least we knew he was a carpenter. He did stuff, right? And so we know he was a worker. And back in those days, it was hard work, right? People worked with their hands. They worked with hand tools. And so here's Joe, just one of the boys. Joe could look like any one man on the human planet. Description-wise, kind of hard, right? But maybe he was scruffy-faced. Maybe he was clean-shaven, whatever, right? Joseph, too, he was a boy. He was one of the boys, one of the guys, right? Back in the day, they used to drink their brews, too, right? All everyone gathered, have their brew. Back in the day, they didn't have micro stuff and all this. They had brew. They had brews that had a kick like a donkey, right? And so we don't know if Joseph maybe took too much brew or knew how to handle his brew. But here's Joseph coming along, right, doing their thing. And so here's Joseph and Mary, right? Joseph sees Mary. He's like, hey, how you doing, little doll? Huh? What's going on, huh? And she's like, oh, Joe, right? But to me, what's striking in the story is that if you remove the divine concepts to them, these are the regular humans. It's a miracle for me. Back in those days, life was a struggle. We look at things so simplistically these days, right? Because we have stability and we have security. They didn't have that back in those days. So now people will be like, oh yeah, they went, like how I said, they went about their lives. Well, for them to go grab water, we think, oh, I'm going to go grab water because we just hop in the car, we go to the store. They went to go grab water. It was like a 2-day trip through the desert to the well. They had to pack stuff up. They had to tell people, hey, we're going. Can you take care of my things? There was no simplicity in what they did back then. And we think very simplistically these days. And so, right? So, it was a challenge. And so it was a miracle. Here's Mary, maybe pregnant. Maybe she doesn't have a kid, right? Or maybe she already had a kid. Single mom, right? Here's Joseph, humbled himself, the most humane thing. Hey, you know what, baby doll? I got you, right? Like Shane Elvey, he's not my blood, but he's my boy, right? This is a very human thing. Now, we say we're going to give an example of of Jesus running away to the temple. There's 2 ways to look at this. I look in this way. We say quality parenting. Parents, have you ever had children, right, where you all of a sudden your little kid's packing and they're going to make a plan. They're like, Mom, I'm going to do this, right? Because they have confidence. They know how to plan. They have self-esteem, right? And so I look at it in this context as in Jesus was getting ready, right? And mom and dad, okay, we got to be careful, right? He's all prepped for his little adventure. And so they knew to go look for him at the temple. I take away from this is like, hey, even like with structure and stability, Jesus knew, right, even as a little kid, to go to the temple, go seek wisdom for his journey. That's one context. Second context, not going to be so nice. Second context is Mary and Joseph had issues. They were having problems, financial struggles, too much nutmeg, too much donkey brew, right? These things happen. Maybe finances, maybe struggles, maybe external political, social things going on, right? In this case, though, right, abuses. A child, Jesus knew, hey, things not working out at the house here, I'm going to go to the temple, right? These are two contexts this story can be presented in. In the way what we take them as far as symbology hidden in the book, right? And so, in this case, quality parenting and parenting that needs more quality. And so, what this goes to show you for us is that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus are a representation and an image of the structures of human families, not literally, but symbolically, right? And in this case, say, in the end, Jesus died, right? We'll use that. Guess what? We experience loss. For some families, they experience loss, abuse, death, separation, suffering. Some families never experience this. So, this is an image of how, like, Mary, Jesus, and Joseph are every single human family on the face of the planet. Everyone experienced loss, joy, grief, ups, downs. You know, life is dynamic. It's not static. And so, in these things, right, when you think of loss, like, what did you find in loss? For those who experienced loss, community, right? In your grief, understanding, compassion, humility, connection. So in loss, you experience picking yourself up and knowing that just possibly God may not have a plan, but you knew he was there, right? So, one of the things we should take away from the story of Jesus as a child, right, is parents. Children have an innate ability for spirit, for God. Some of you parents out there, you ever get chills when your child prays? Or you feel like shivers, or you're like, oh, geez, it feels like they're talking to someone, like they're talking to a friend. Why do you think you're getting the chills? Because you're experiencing something real or not real, huh? Why do you doubt your children? Maybe in this case, we should be more like children. So, now we're going to switch over and I'm going to talk about the man in the red spandex. So, you're like, oh, the man in the red spandex. For a long time, I myself spent looking for devils. You know, I was like, the devil. And I couldn't see this red creature. But what I could, see was like certain behavior that came like a wind. Pew, pew, pew. And I was like, well, this devil, he's got to be like the Flash. Maybe he wears red spandex and he's super fast, right? I'm like, all right. I was looking here and there and finally I'm not sure if I gave up looking or I just saw it everywhere or whatever. Right? So I go about my day. During that time, I was super stressed. I was tired. I was over aroused. I had a lot of challenging situations, right? A lot of people, because it's us and we're changing and it's very difficult for people to grasp change. It comes with a bit of a resistance, right? And so I go home, right? I caused a stir in the workplace, right? I was tired and people who I connected with, who were attempting to understand me, were kind of shocked and they didn't know because I suddenly became very emotional and a very passionate person. So we scared off people that we had connected with, that we wanted to get to know better, and that we feel were genuinely attempting to understand us, right? So I go home and I'm like, oh, geez, right, this happened. I go home. And as I'm walking by the mirror, I'm like, oh, I startle myself and I look and I see the man in the red spandex looking back at me. So, lesson from this is, the devil was in my head, right? You can't see the devil. We see devilish behaviors, devilish actions, but it's not like there's a physical entity that's like, oh, hey, right? And so what I found that the devil, what was happening for me was that I was projecting unresolved issues and unresolved behavior that I had in myself onto others and seeing it in places where it was not. And that I was introjecting values, beliefs, and opinions that were not my own and attempting to use them as if they were my own. And so what I found was that in these things, ideals, values, and opinions have to be from oneself. They have to grow innately from you. When I say an ideal, for me, an ideal is that there should be, society should be perfect. A value is that I will not cheat on a spouse, or I'm not going to hurt people because guess what? It's harmful, it hurts, it causes pain, suffering, it causes hell. That's a value for me. And an opinion is people go to hell for who they choose to be intimate with. Right? So, in this case for me, and like what I take away is that your values, are they carried with a warmness and conviction and innately from you? Or do your values mixed in with an opinions and have the coldness of an opinion? So, in these things, what I look at is, right, am I being warm or am I being cold? Is what I'm saying have conviction, it has emotion, it has substance, or am I just repeating empty words? Right? If you just repeat stuff, that has no value, that's just thinking. But when you say things with meaning, that has thinking and feeling attached to it. Sensation. So sometimes I'm at a loss when I hear people say, hey, yo, oh man, the devil made me do it. And I'm like, dude, you might want to take off your red spandex. So now we're going to jump into symbology and how I use the great family and how we see them. So, have you ever had an experience like deja vu, coincidence, right? Have you ever had something work out unexpectedly? Right? And things just like you feel blessed, it feels magical, luminous, numinous, enlightening, lucky. We have those days, right, where you have what's maybe called flow, and things drop, you pick them up, right? You look over here, someone looks at you, you smile, right? And then you wave over here, oh, bam, another smile, you're like, oh, hey, right? Things have rhythm, things work out. This is what's called like, right, it has flow, you go with it. There's no objective purpose, it's not static why this is happening, it's dynamic, it's things interacting. Causality and non-causality, cause and no cause. So then these things we feel like a child, at least I do. And so this is one of the ways that I find like fascinating in the way people used to describe or look at things symbolically, right? So for us, we'll show you how we look at it. So we look at, as far as like happiness or flow, belonging to parts of the mind, right? So one side of the mind, your left side, and your right side of your mind, right? And so when you're working in conjuncture, you say here, right? Kind of logos, ethos, and pathos, or I'm getting them mixed up, but 1, 2, 3, right? Your left side, your right side, and your center, who you are. Well, when you go ahead and your both sides are cooperating, right? That means it forms a line. But then if both sides are cooperating, then that means that's like your mom and your dad or your inner parents helping you out. They put your hands down, right? Like a little triangle, right? And then that little triangle, they put their hands down, they lift you up. But people get stuck up here. You're not supposed to get stuck up here, right? You're supposed to come back down. So I don't know, but it has to do with mind and body and spirit and soul. As you can see, it forms a little cross. So for us, this is how we use the symbol and images. To me, Joseph, Jesus, and Mary can be two parents and a child. Whether that parent be to a mother, a father, and a child, two fathers and a child, two mothers and a child. Like whatever configuration humans use to make up a family unit, it doesn't matter as long as there's love, understanding, compassion, and empathy, right? There's connection, right? That's one way we use that image. It's everybody on the face of the planet, every family. This is the way we use the cross. We tie it into thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation. So we have a very abstract way of using the cross, which has a lot more significance. But instead of pinpointing it at others and fighting devils outside of me, I use the cross to keep my red spandex at bay. So, right? And so that's part of symbology. Those are symbols. And now I'm going to touch on Lent. So as we get ready for this Lent season and people will start giving things up, for me, it seems that we've made it all about what they do for us, what God does for us. You know, Jesus died for me so that I can be forgiven for my sins, so that I can go to heaven. And yeah, it's all about us, right? And so when we go to confession, we give up our sins so that we may be forgiven, entry to heaven. We have Lent coming around, and now people right now, they're going to give up what? We're going to give up our pleasures, right? Our indulgences. I don't want to eat ice cream, intimacy, working out, whatever thing that you find indulgent, people will give up. Meat is also will be given up. For us, we don't find a whole lot of substance in these things. And this is why. When you go to confess, right, you confess, you're giving up sins. Right? In Lent, you're giving up things that might bring you pleasure. What is the Spirit supposed to do with all these things? The great God. What is he going to do with the ice cream you didn't eat? All the indulgences you didn't do, right? He might need you to keep some of these things that make you happy for you. And in this case, and in the case like confession, what about working on some things without giving them up, right? You say, you know what, I'm going to work this one out myself. I'll ease the load of the man on the cross. I'll work through this one myself. Maybe God needs us to keep some things for ourselves to work through our sorrows and our happiness, because this too shall pass. And so, one concept I look at, how come we're not giving up our mistrust, right? We're not giving up our anger, we're not giving up our jealousy, we're not giving up our mistrust of our neighbors, our communities, our friends, right? Our enemies. We're not choosing to give that up, the concept of enemies. We're choosing to give up things, right? This thing, oh yeah, give that or indulging. Give up the things that cause the behavior that causes negativity. We should be looking at giving up those things, right? And so that's why I say, you know, people look at like God's just an objective thing. That's the concept of a belief, like how I showed you the symbol of being dynamic. I use the cross in a dynamic function. It's better than the cross being objective. Oh, this is my salvation. The cross for me, this is my healing. Healing is growth. Salvation is and that's it. It's a dead thing. Growth is always going on. Salvation ends, growth continues. That's why for us, your belief should be dynamic and innately tied into you, right? It's kind of like the radio. Beliefs are supposed to be like the radio. You don't dance to static, but then when a nice dynamic sound, it's explosive, you're like boom, 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 you feel it, right? And you feel it and you go with it, right? This is flow. You're like, oh, geez. And so I say this because it's found everywhere. You find it in the smallest moments. You can tell when you've lost it, when you get aches and headaches and you're like, oh, I'm having a bad day, and you're anxious and nervous. It's because you've made your life too objective and you look at things in an objective fashion. This is why one of the things that we look at, like when people look for Jesus and look for God, they look, it's like they're looking for Waldo. They look in the book, but they forget there's a thing here in Waldo. Waldo's always hiding amongst people, places, and objects. So it's not suffice to look in a book. Gotta look all around you, everyone. So let's make this season about empathy, understanding, compassion, right? About removing the concept of enemies. We're misunderstanding each other. There's no enemies here. The enemy is the devil in our head. It's our red spandex, yo. We gotta take them off. So let's make it about them. Let's not make it about what they're doing for us because they have to do. What about God's own subjective and objective thing himself? We've made it all about what they're gonna do for us, and we're so sure. And it's like, you're gonna tell creation what creation's gonna do? Come on, are you going to tell your parents what to do? So I say, let's expand. Let's treat everyone with respect. With respect. Like, because say if not, what is God going to do this poor holiday season? God's going to have to indulge in all the things you don't want. And then who's God going to go confess to? Then he's going to be a sinner. So everyone, many blessings, love, joy. We will be out for a few weeks, but many blessings for the great family of God. We love you. See you soon.